Rahul Gandhi's concern for Hinduism. Welcome, Vanakkam, and my good wishes to all. One of the most important issues that Rahul Gandhi raised in his speech responding to the budget presented by the finance minister in the parliament was the question as to who represents Hinduism. And since this question has been raised in full public glare and raised from the highest temple of Indian democracy, namely the Parliament of India, and since this procedure was beamed live through the length and breadth of this country, as a citizen of India, I paid very careful attention to all that every speaker on the subject was saying, particularly the speech of the Prime Minister and the speech of Rahul Gandhi as the leader of the opposition. From my point of view, the most significant aspect or part of Rahul Gandhi's speech concerned the question that he raised in such an emphatic fashion as to who represents Hinduism. Having said that Hinduism does not believe in falsehood, does not believe in hatred, does not believe in violence, he then turned to those in the treasury benches, and I am sure keeping a couple of individuals in mind in particular, he said, "You don't represent Hinduism." And he of course mentioned a couple of people in particular. You don't represent Hinduism. In terms of what you stand for, what you advocate, what you practice, you are actually the detractors, if not enemies of Hinduism. So this is the burden of the song. Now, I have been thinking on this part of the speech for several days, as should be obvious because the speech was done several days ago, and I did not spring into any public statement or analysis or reflection on this obviously very sensitive issue. But having very calmly and carefully thought about the matter, I thought or I came to the conclusion that it is desirable, wholesome, useful to reflect very objectively on this issue. What is the context of this question? The question is that two camps, both claiming loyalty to Hinduism, both claiming Hinduism to be their spiritual home, spiritual, cultural home, are actually at loggerheads with each other. Party A believes that it represents Hinduism and it alone represents Hinduism. Party B believes that it practices true Hinduism. So there is obviously a clash. Now, if there is a single chair somewhere and two people want to sit on it, there will be a problem. They will have to fight between themselves and decide who gets to occupy the chair. Or one party has to agree to accommodate the other party in his lap, which is not possible in this context because there are parties involved. One party cannot sit in the lap of the other. So a ferocious encounter happened, as was bound to happen, on this issue as to who represents Hinduism. And Rahul Gandhi presented the parameters by which this question needs to be settled. Namely, Hinduism believes in truth, in ahimsa, in welcoming everyone. He referred to Shiv Ke Barat, to which everybody is welcome, no discrimination, nobody is excluded, no hatred, no nafrat. This kind of Catholicity, true Catholicity of Hinduism. In fact, I have no hesitation in saying that the Hindu religion is more Catholic than the Catholic Church itself. For the Catholic to call itself Catholic, it's a misnomer. Catholic Church is anything but Catholic because they don't have the inner freedom and the breadth of the spirit or understanding by which to accept even fellow Christians who are called people of the Reformed churches. Now, how can a church that excludes all others be called Catholic? I don't understand, because the word Catholic means universal, and therefore no discrimination on the basis of anything whatsoever should be acceptable to a Catholic. As has been well and truly said, the moment you say that you are a Catholic, you cease to be a Catholic, but that's another issue. So, I have no hesitation in saying that Hindus are far more Catholic than Catholics. So, that's Rahul Gandhi's claim, and I fully endorse that claim. That's the reason why religions who have been persecuted elsewhere, Jews being a good example, Parsis being another example, came and found a peaceful habitation, a peaceful home, a place of acceptance, a place of refuge in India. In fact, the only place, to the best of my knowledge, where the Jews were not persecuted was India. Throughout Europe, they were hounded out. And as I said in one of my earlier videos, the Jews were not allowed to set foot in England for 350 years. So you can imagine. And then what happened to the Jews in Germany, what happened to Jews in other parts of Europe, that's common knowledge, I don't have to repeat. Whereas Jews were warmly welcomed and allowed to live as they pleased, remaining faithful to their religion and their culture, their ways of life, and flourish in this country. Though of course they were few in number. Now, therefore, Rahul Gandhi is quite right in saying, I don't think any Hindu Pandit, scholar, religious scholar, any Hindu priest of any distinction, any Shankaracharya, any Mahamandaleshwar, any accredited scholarly pracharak of the Hindu religion will dispute Rahul Gandhi's idea or claim that Hinduism believes in love rather than hate, truth rather than untruth, and Catholicity rather than narrow-minded exclusivity. So the question is, who represents Hinduism? Now, he posed this question. Unfortunately, the other party, the treasury benches, did not engage with that question. Or the only response I got, I saw, was that of the Prime Minister, who got up and said something which, in my judgment, was quite disappointing, inappropriate. He said Rahul Gandhi is portraying all of Hindus as Hinsak, or those who believe in and practice Hinsa or violence. Whereas Rahul Gandhi was saying exactly the opposite. What he said was that while Hinduism believes in ahimsa, non-violence, while it believes in truths, while it believes in Catholicity of outlook, universal spirituality, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, you, for your narrow political gains, distort Hinduism as a religion of intolerance, as a religion that countenances the usage of falsehood to gain political mileage out of it, and so on and so forth. I don't want to go into those unedifying details. It was that debate that the BJP should have engaged, because Rahul Gandhi was raising an issue of crucial significance, extreme significance. And I was quite disappointed that this issue was not joined. Instead, a very feeble and irrelevant complaint was articulated, and based on that, attempts were made outside the parliament to foment anti-Rahul hatred, or attempts were made to portray Rahul Gandhi as an enemy of Hinduism, one who caricatures or misrepresents Hinduism. Fortunately, this didn't click. It proved a damn squib, and a very senior, respected Hindu religious leader made an explicit public statement saying that Rahul Gandhi cannot be accused of having insulted Hinduism. So this is the context. Now in this context, let me offer just one slice of thought, that's all. Now in order to come to that thought, let me set up the context, because the context is very important. Suppose you have a medical company, pharmaceutical firm. You are manufacturing medicine X, any medicine X, and you appoint, say, 10 medical representatives whose job it is to go and liaise with various doctors, hospitals, maybe even medical shops, in order to promote the sale of the drug that you manufacture. So you accredit him and you make him your medical representative. But after a while you realize that this person, instead of selling the drug for which he is engaged, he is selling hard drugs, marijuana or cocaine or whatever. What will you do? He would say, I am selling drugs. But it's not the drug for the sale of which you engaged him. Nor is he selling legitimate drug, he is actually selling contraband drug. But he can always say, well, I am selling drugs. Who are you to ask me a question? Now you will not tolerate that situation. You would say you are engaged to sell this particular drug, and the authentic properties of the drug that you were required to sell were these and these and these, whereas the properties of the drug that you are selling are those and those and those. So out you go. You will have zero tolerance for a person who, under your accreditation, is selling bad drugs or even fake drugs, even if it's not hard drugs, psychedelic drugs. He is selling some spurious drug. Will you tolerate him? No, you won't. Because it is seriously harmful to your interests, your material interests. That's the reason. Or take another example. India sends ambassadors and high commissioners to various countries. Suppose the government of India finds out, the Ministry of External Affairs finds out that a particular ambassador who is sent to a particular country, rather than promoting the interest of the country that sent him, is acting against the interests of the country. What will you do? What will India do? Immediately recall that person and withdraw all accreditations from him, isn't it? Why? Because the interests of the country, the material interests of the country are affected. You can think of n number of illustrations of this category, and in each instance you will certainly come to the conclusion that you will allow no margin of tolerance for someone who misrepresents the substance or the duties or whatever is entrusted to him and hijacks it for his own vested interests or for purposes completely contrary to the original intended purpose. How come then, this is the issue, how come then that when, if Rahul Gandhi's allegation is correct, and nobody has debated that, so far nobody has maintained that what he said is untrue, no Shankaracharya, no Mahamandaleshwar, no scholar on Hinduism has to this day, after so many days, said that whatever Rahul Gandhi said as the essence of Hinduism is completely wrong. Nobody has said that. So, when such an issue is raised, how can anybody remain indifferent? Either what Rahul Gandhi says is wrong or what the opposite camp says is wrong. One of the two parties is seriously misrepresenting Hinduism. And since this issue has been posited in public, there's a need to settle this. The whole country is interested in this question because, after all, Hinduism is the majority religion. At least 82% of Indians are Hindus. It's a religion that, irrespective of one's religious background, one truly respects for its philosophical, spiritual content. Doctrinal differences apart, ritualistic differences apart, I have no hesitation in saying that even though my knowledge of Hindu spiritual philosophy is very, very rudimentary, I find it very stimulating to be exposed to it in a very limited manner. I acquired through Swami Agnivesh, who was very kind enough to gift to me a set of 6 books interpreting the 4 Vedas, comprising perhaps some 3,000 pages. Unfortunately, I have not had the time to turn to those volumes. They are still stacked in my library. There is so much to be understood, there is so much to be known. This world is full of wonderful, glorious things, but life of a man is too short to do justice to all of them. But at least one can refrain from misrepresenting the true treasures of other religions, which are also actually the treasures common to all of humanity. I believe the spiritual treasures constitute the shared heritage of humanity, and the religious differences don't have to hinder us from benefiting from that. Many of my fellow Christians hold a very different view on this matter, and therefore when I say this, they will be provoked. I am quite happy to incur their displeasure because it's something that I sincerely believe in, and I believe that the freedom of religion that I am entitled to enables me to be true to my conscience as far as religious matters are concerned. I find good things in all religions. I find good insights in all spiritual literatures. Just as I find very valuable good insights in philosophy, various schools of philosophy, and various branches of knowledge as well, including science, where my knowledge is very, very limited. So, it's important that we take our religion seriously. My concern, my disappointment is not that people are very religious. My real concern is that people are too shallow in their religiosity, as a result of which they do not know what they believe in. Everybody assumes that one is a Hindu, one is a Muslim, one is a Christian, one is a Sikh, so on and so forth. But I can say this with great confidence as far as my religious community, Christian community is concerned. Not even 1% of Christians would know what their faith is. Not even 1% of Christians would know the true meaning of faith, leave alone the detailed matters of faith. The very meaning of the word faith, not even 1% of Christians would know. Religion is a domain of entrenched ignorance, and the religious agenda goes on and on and on, driven mainly by the engine of ignorance. So, when I try as a Christian, when I try to raise the question as to what is Christianity, who represents the way of Jesus Christ? Does the church represent the way of Christ? Or does the humble believer who tries to be sincere and earnest about the matters of his faith and tries to abolish the contradiction between what he believes and what he does, who represents the way of Jesus Christ? Then extreme violence is unleashed against me, not physical violence as yet, but verbal violence, emotional violence, and I'm immediately caricatured as an enemy of Christianity. In fact, mainline churches today have convinced a vast majority of their followers that the number one enemy to Christianity is this old man called Valsen Thampu, because he raises the question as to who represents the way of Jesus Christ. Well, I don't want to dispute that that Christianity is represented by various churches. That's their prerogative. I have nothing to say on the matter. But I certainly need to ask the question. I will continue to ask the question till I die, as to who represents the way of Jesus Christ. Because Jesus Christ stood for these and these and these things, and I don't find the church caring for any one of them. So the question that Rahul Gandhi raised in relation to Hinduism, I feel obliged to raise, and I have been raising this question for the last 8 years in particular, with the consequences that people who are in the know of things know of already, and I don't want to go into mentioning the details. So in this light, I have to say, and that is in the light of my experience, Hinduism is far more tolerant than the churches. I'm not saying Christianity or the way of Jesus Christ or Christianity as represented or embodied in churches is far, far inferior to Hinduism in terms of its culture of tolerance. In any church whatsoever, whether in Kerala, whether in any part of India, any part of the world, you cannot survive within a church if you raise radical questions as to what is Christianity, what are the ideals of Jesus Christ, what are the teachings of Jesus Christ, what are the applications of these teachings to the life of the church, the life of the believer, who represents the way of Jesus Christ. If you ask such questions, the reprisal would be so swift and decisive that you will find yourself kicked out of the concerned church in no time. You'll be labeled an enemy of the church, an enemy of the religion concerned. However, on this occasion, I want to appeal to all right-minded Christians, all believers who are not slaves of the church or slaves of the establishment. By the way, in Pakistan, the word establishment means the army. It's very interesting that in Pakistan, they make a very curious distinction between the establishment and the government. The government is a political entity, but the establishment is the military establishment. That's just as an aside. So, my appeal to Christians who wish to take their faith life seriously and who want to be honest and upright about their calling to be the disciples or followers of Jesus Christ is that they need to ask for themselves this question, the question that in a political context Rahul Gandhi raised from the highest forum in this country, the temple of Indian democracy, the parliament. Each one of us needs to raise this question in relation to our own religion. Who represents the way of Jesus Christ? Let there be debate in our midst if we have the courage. What are we afraid of? Don't you think that the people who are trying to propagate Christianity, who invoke Article 25 of the Constitution in season and out of season, they have a duty to answer this question? Don't you think that it is absurd? Don't you think it's mad, insane to try and propagate something that you don't understand, about which you feel so insecure? If you are insecure about the fundamentals of your faith, how dare you propagate that faith, and how dare you invite people from other faiths into this state of confusion? Isn't that practicing fraud? And isn't that a crime? And shouldn't such conversions be banished by law? I have no doubt at all that if there is an element of fraud in this, it must be banished because it's a crime. Practicing fraud is a crime. I am not at all convinced today that those who are busy in the business of converting people from other religions into Christianity understand the way of Jesus Christ. Rather, I am convinced to the contrary that they don't have the foggiest idea as to what the way of Jesus Christ is. Therefore, I feel deeply troubled. I feel perturbed. And this is not something new that I'm saying. I said it 30 years ago. And then also it created a huge ruckus. And in 30 years' time, I've become only clearer in this matter. No element of deception or element of fraud should be admitted into anything which is spiritual, anything which claims to be godly. Who has the moral right, legal right? Keep it aside for the time. Who has the moral right to convert a person from another faith into Christianity, unless and until that person has reliable and adequate, truthful, spiritually valid understanding of the faith? And having known many people who have been active in this field of converting others, I can tell you that none of them, absolutely none of them, because we all agree that Christianity is this, that, and the other, without bothering even for a minute as to how this matches what Jesus taught, stood for, and died for. We have our own versions of Christianity. Maybe these people belong to those versions. I'm talking about what Jesus Christ taught, what Jesus Christ lived and entrusted to us. So therefore, the time has come in this country to initiate a national debate, sustained national debate on what is religion, and within that large framework, with respect to each religion, what is Hinduism? What are the essentials of Hinduism? What are the essentials of Christianity? What are the essentials of Islam? What are the essentials of Sikhism? So on and so forth. There should be a national exercise spread over maybe 5 years. Let these fundamental issues of supreme significance be debated openly in an ambience of religious freedom, free from fear of the authorities, fear of reprisals, so that some national understanding as to this most crucial issue for all Indians is arrived at, rather than people groping in the dark all the time, then fighting among themselves simply because they don't know what they're fighting for. And I'm reminded of those words by Matthew Arnold, that famous poem by him, Dover Beach, where he says, "Here, as we are on a darkling plain where ignorant armies clash by night." These people who are creating so much of bad blood, enmity, hatred, violence in the name of their religions, being religious zealots, bigots, hotheads, they have no idea as to what they're talking about. Let's really examine this question. I think Rahul Gandhi has given us a very good starting point, and I'm quite disappointed that this is lost sight of. And I kept quiet so far because I thought that someone or the other will pick it up, because it's much rather that somebody from the Hindu community picks it up and makes good use of, healthy use of it for the long-term benefit of Hinduism itself. Every religion stands in need of periodic revival, and revivals happen only when issues are projected, confronted, addressed, and debated in an attitude of freedom within a culture of truthfulness. So I would see Rahul Gandhi's statement in that positive light, though predictably the effort that was made was singularly to discredit what he said and to make his well-meaning statement boomerang on him. Fortunately, because the people of India have a very substantial degree of fair-mindedness about them, that stratagem that ploy didn't work. So, but I think the issue that you raised still remains. The issue is of crucial significance. Therefore, I thought it would be worth our while to at least initiate a process among ourselves. Fortunately, in this small YouTube Sangam, there are people of all religions and most religions. And therefore, I consider it a very rich experience to be in fellowship with people of every faith and people of no faith. human beings are human beings in the end. And I pray to God to grant me the breadth of love and the generosity of the Spirit to love all people without any heed as to what religions they practice and whether or not they practice religions. Because I believe that God exists outside of religious elbow rooms, religious prisons. So, what is true religion? What is the essence of religion? And what is uh, uh, the essence of a particular religion? And how do all these things cohere to create the spiritual nourishment of humanity? That's, I think, an important question. It needs to be addressed and addressed over a long period of time. Jai Hind.